All right, so today we're going to take our look at demand one step further, and we're going to be taking a look at something called determinants of demand. Now, determinants is just a word we use in economics to refer to the non price influences that happen in our lives. So basically, when life happens, things change in our lives and it influences our behavior, and we change the things that we're wanting to buy and that we have demand for because of that. And it has nothing to do with the price of the product. The price can stay exactly the same, and yet we want more or less of it. So that is a demand issue. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today here is looking at what are those determinants? How exactly do they work? So as we go through the six of them, there are six categories. We're looking at what exactly does this mean? What would be changing? And then also, how will that affect demand when that does change? So that we're able to understand once we put demand and supply together, what's going to happen to the price of this product when it changes. So right now, we're just looking at the initial reaction here when life changes. All right, so the first determinant of demand is something called number of consumers. And this is anytime the population actually change. So this is there's literally more or less people living in an area. It fits in this category here. So this can be anything that brings more people in. So there can be a mass migration in, a baby boom, like the city goes crazy economically and grows, or it could be something like some virus wipes out a lot of people, or there's a mass migration out, anything like that that affects the number of people living in an area fits again here in this category. Now, what we're not talking about is how many people are buying a product. Um, that's not number of consumers, although there is a change in the number of consumers. It's not actually changing the population. It's just saying the same people live here and less people are interested in this, and that doesn't fit in this category here. So we're not looking at interest in a product. We're looking at actual number of people living in an area. So when the number of consumers increases, demand for products will increase as well because there's literally more people living in an area. So there are more people that are going to be desiring products and buying products, and so that's demand, right? When the number of consumers decreases, the demand for products will decrease as well. All right, so that one's pretty simple. Um, the next one here is substitutes. Now, in this case, we have two products. Let me go back one. Two products that are kind of being looked at here, and these products are interchangeable. We can use one in place of the other. So anytime you have competition, you have options, right? There are substitute products, and so consumers will be able to switch to a different product if there's a price change in something else. So those other products that don't see a price change will still have their demand affected because of what their competition is doing, right? And so when we look at this relationship here, the way we say this is that the price of good A increases, then the demand for good B will increase as well, and vice versa. If the price of one product decreases, demand for substitute products will decrease. Okay, so example, we're going to look at Coke and Pepsi. If the price of Coke were to increase, now Coke is more expensive. Most consumers, we consider consumers when we're looking at demand to be rational, which means they don't have a tie to one product. They're going to go with whatever the cheaper option is. So if Coke raises their their prices, law of demand tells us price increases, quantity demanded decreases. So less people would be buying Coke, but that doesn't mean less people want to buy pop. And so what they're going to do is some of those people are going to make that switch to Pepsi. And so Pepsi, even though they have not changed anything at all about their price, their product, their advertising, nothing, they're going to have more demand because people are going to buy that since it's the cheaper option. And so their demand would increase because of what Coca-Cola is doing. And if that switched, if Coke lowered their prices, now they're the cheaper option. So demand for Pepsi would decrease because even though they didn't change their price, they're now the more expensive option here. And so competitors really care about this. We just look for what's the cheapest option. We're going to go with that. But businesses really need to know what their competitors are doing because if Coke and Pepsi are pretty similar products and one changes the price, the other needs to know because their demand is going to be affected. And so if they want to contain or continue their sales, they need to know what's happening here. That's also why competition is important, especially for us as consumers, is because if there are price changes, the more competition, the more options we have, so that we're not having to pay higher prices than what we want to pay. The less competition there is when those price changes happen, we're just stuck paying them because we don't have any alternatives. All right. So thinking back to when we talked about oligopolies and monopolies. All right, next one is income. So we're actually looking at how much money people have to live off of. Anything that affects consumers' income fits in this category. So this could be a pay raise, a pay cut, people getting hired or getting a second job or losing a job, or it could be taxes are changing. Now, it's very specific on what taxes. This would be more income tax or like property tax, things that are going to affect how much money people have to live off of. Um, Sales tax not really going to affect it because that's such a changing amount. So we're really looking at income and how much people have to live off of. And when that changes, it fits in this category. Now, what we're not looking at is how much you can buy with the money you have. That's purchasing power. And when prices change, our purchasing power changes, so what we buy changes. But that's not because your income actually changed. That's because the price of goods changed. So that's where that quantity demanded will come in. Now, once you know income is changing, you do need to take it a little bit further because products fit into two categories. They can be a normal good or an inferior good, right? An inferior good would be like the knockoff brands, the store brands, the cheaper products, right? You'd be buying like the Great Value or the Kroger brand instead of the name brand stuff, right? When you don't have a lot of money to spend, inferior goods are what you're buying, right? They're the cheaper, off-brand, not the best quality products. When you have more money, you typically buy more normal goods. So these tend to be more name brand, higher quality, more expensive products. And so when we say, okay, income is changing, we want to know what happens to demand for products. We need to know what type of product that is. So if it's a normal good, then when your income increases, demand for those products increases as well because people have more money to spend. And so they're able to afford those more expensive products. They buy those more expensive products. When their income decreases, you're not able to buy as much as what you did before. And so your demand for those normal goods will decrease. Now, inferior goods is kind of the opposite of that, right? The more money you have, the less inferior goods you buy because most people will make that switch to the name brand, the normal good. And so they'll buy less of the cheaper stuff, less inferior goods as they have more money. If their income decreases, you have less, you'd make that switch to the inferior goods. And now you're buying more of the off-brand, cheaper products because that's all you can really afford, right? So again, you need to identify what type of good it is before you can say what's going to happen to the demand for this. All right, go ahead and go to the second video as we finish talking about the determinants here.